On the Etosha, it's not real deep. This is a pretty shallow water wreck site. It's 60 feet max. The main pile, the mother lode of the Etosha, which was found in 1985, which you may or may not know was pretty impressive. It was $450 million in treasure in one pile.
That's incredible.
And it was 55 feet deep. And, when they found this pile of treasure, it doesn't look like, what you might think Hollywood would make it look like. It looks like a big reef. But really, those were all silver bars and cannons and ballast stones and chests of coins that just had all this coral growth on them. But the crazy thing is, on that main pile, there were lures.
That's what I was thinking about, the people
all
fishing.
Kinds of
I've caught so many grouper over that hole.
Yeah, exactly. So,
wow.
And it turns out it was $450 million of silver bars and silver coins. But again, to go back, that's a fairly shallow water wreck. There's not a lot of danger as far as the bends and stuff. But when you're a dive team out there, you're diving all the time. You're probably doing 3 or 4 dives in a day, and you're rotating. You do your dive, you come up, next couple goes in, they do their dive, and you're working topside, and then another 2 guys go in. So you're rotating like every 3 or 4 people, or every 3 or 4 sets, if you will. And generally, you're in the water for 45 minutes to an hour on the Etosha site before you come up. But anyway, it's a very well oiled machine, very disciplined.
Security in terms of people going, we know where the site is now, we're coming in.
That's a good question. Yeah. There have been issues, not so much in the more recent years, but in their early years before Mel actually got claim. There's a whole story there about how Mel got the rights to this particular wreck site. But in the early years, there was a lot of people trying to come out and scoop it or poach it, and there was some shots fired across a couple bows.
Wow.
Yeah, there's some pretty crazy stories. There's a lot of great books out there. Search for the Etosha is a wonderful one by Eugene Lyons. There's a number of them, but there's some fascinating stories. So still today, there are plenty of weapons on board. We've not in recent years had to use them, but we are way out there. It's 30 miles offshore. There's no land in sight. You're just out there all by yourself. This one boat, and so any boat traffic that's going by.
Well, so state waters are what, 9 miles or something like that?
12.
12?
Yeah.
But you're not in state waters. You're in federal, right?
Yeah, it's a real interesting area there. The Etosha and the Margarita site. So the Margarita is the sister ship to the Etosha, and Mel has the rights to both. The organization, Mel obviously has passed on, but his son Kim and daughter Taffy Fisher are running the operation. They still have the rights, the salvage rights of both the Etosha and the Margarita. And here's the important language: where they may lie. That's huge, because where the main pile was found and where we have been working since then, and they're still working today, is a trail that's more than 12 miles northwest of that pile. So here's a little backstory. When the Etosha sank, it sank in a hurricane in 1622, in September of 1622. They had just left Havana, Cuba, loaded with treasure. They come up into the Gulf Stream. Well, they come into the Florida Straits, and they follow the Gulf Stream, right? And the Gulf Stream comes up the east coast of Florida, and then right around St. Augustine, they just take a hard right and head towards Spain. So they're only one day out of Havana, Cuba, loaded. Pretty late in the season. They already knew this, that, to be leaving that late in the season, September, they were taking risk. They were pretty well aware at this point that hurricanes start to really flare up in that area in the late summer, early fall. I mean, you got to remember, Spain had been taking silver and gold from the New World for 350 years. So they'd already been doing it for almost 100 years by the time the Etosha sank. So they're pretty well versed in it.
Where's that gold coming from?
Good question. That's all coming from Central and South America. Lima, Mexico, a lot of the gold at that time was coming from Mexico, and then later Lima, Peru, Bolivia, but all of that area. It's the same area I was traveling with, recently.
Yeah. That's incredible.
But it really is incredible. It sank in a hurricane, 1622, together, the Etosha and the Margarita. There was actually 28 vessels in the fleet. 8 of them sank in this storm. The Etosha and the Margarita were the most valuable. The Etosha was the Almiranta, and the Margarita was the Capitana. And the Almiranta is the rear guard, and the Capitana is the front guard. So you can imagine 28 vessels in a fleet, the Capitana in the front, the Almiranta in the back, other vessels in the middle, And then even other smaller vessels might act as pilots that might be way in front of the Capitana and then also behind the Margarita. So when they were in a fleet, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all like really tight together. They might be spread out over 30, 40, 50 miles, but they're still, in essence, sailing together with the same mission. So 8 of those boats sank. Only 5 have been identified. There's still 3 out there missing.
Wow.
Yeah. But the Etosha and the Margarita were the most loaded with treasure, and they both sank off of Key West, Florida, about 27 miles southwest of Key West.
So take me from the 1600s to how some folks in America in 1985 or 75 or other missions maybe prior knew this information and knew this was there, but nobody in the 1800s got it or tried to?
No, that's a great question. Spaniards were incredibly good record keepers, right? So this is a tiny little country that was a massive power. Think about this, right? How big is Spain? It's not that big in the scheme of things, right? And you compare it to us and Russia and things like that. But back then, they were one of the most powerful countries in the world. And they were, so they were going all the way from Spain to North and Central America and also over to the Orient, Manila. And they were taking and trading between these. They had massive commerce, 350 years. And they were incredibly good sailors and record keepers. So when the Etosha and the Margarita sank, they had very good record of that. Whenever a fleet like that leaves a port like Havana, they do a manifest in triplicate. So there was a copy of the manifest on the vessel. There was a copy of that manifest on another vessel in the fleet, and also a copy left at the port in Havana. Obviously, the manifest from the Etosha is gone.
Right.
But one of those other 2 was still, and still is today, in the archives in Seville, Spain.
Wow.
So it's very well documented as to what was on board the ship. And the Spanish government, when they lost it, it was a huge loss to them. I'd say close to 10% of the king's wealth, that one fleet. So it was such a big loss that he actually, or the government, looked for the Etosha for over 70 years. So they did, for 70 years, keep going back to this area and look for the Etosha Margarita. They never found the Etosha. They did find some of the Margarita, but not nearly enough to recoup it all. So, again, 70 years of looking. Right. After that, people start to forget about it, right? And I don't know that there was any real attempts in the 1700s or 1800s. It might have been a couple little ones, but nothing with any success. And it wasn't until Mel started looking, and he started looking in 1969. Took him 16 years to find the mother lode of the Etosha. So it's not easy, but with a lot of patience and perseverance and a lot of will.
And try to keep convincing investors that, hey, we're going to find it.
You got it.
So a
lot of money.
Well, what separates, so you've been doing this for a while. You were season 3?
Treasure Quest?
Treasure Quest, Discovery Channel?
Yes.
What separates I would call you professional. Yep. Number one, you're dive certified. You've done all these things.
I make a living at finding treasure.
Right. That's like that's a cool gig. What separates someone who is good? Because Mel Fisher's has been kind of referred to as like the mecca, the mentor, the guy that's
real pioneer.
What separates him from this other guy who's got $1 million in the bank and has got a ship off the coast of somewhere?
That's a great question. Personality.
Yeah.
Right. So Mel didn't have any money. You make a great point. How do you do it if you don't have any money? Because it's a very costly venture. Mel was probably the most charismatic guy I've ever met in my life. And he could sell. He would just get you caught up in the dream. He was really great at selling the adventure. And that's what really everybody wants to be a part of, right? What is life about? You want some excitement in your life. And Mel could sell you that.
I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you're wondering why I'm pointing my fingers like this, it's because momentarily a video is going to pop up here and here that you can enjoy watching. Please like and subscribe to this channel, as well as turn your notifications on. My mom would really appreciate it.